Are we getting lazier? I don't mean that to judge anyone. This is happening to me, too. And by lazy, I simply mean the phenomena of wanting or needing to do something, be it personal or professional, and just not doing it. Whether it's getting distracted by basically any type of short-form content, or doing some other leisure activity, such as watching movies, playing video games, or in some obscure cases, reading. Or maybe you just do what I do, which is open up your computer to get some work done, and just staring at it for about 30 minutes. And I've looked into this, and according to the OECD's productivity database, and the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, overall working hours have been trending down since the 1970s, but overall worker productivity has been steadily rising. All this to say that, statistically speaking, I'm just wrong. In fact, people in first world countries are far more productive now than ever before, depending on how you measure it. But even if you want it to be extra pedantic, there is still no version of this where you can say that we are lazier now than at any other point in history. This information seemingly closes the case on why we're getting lazier, the answer being that we just aren't. Except for the fact that that raises a whole new host of questions because I'm still just staring at my computer. So I suppose now the question changes from why are we getting lazier to why does it feel like we are? And what actually is the concept of laziness? This bit isn't difficult. You can Google the word laziness and get a definition in about 2 seconds. And what comes up is quality of being unwilling to work or use energy. Idleness, which is fine from a purely objective point of view. Agreed, those words in that order do essentially amount to the definition of the word in question, but I also feel that there's a certain negative connotation which comes with that definition, which doesn't quite fit what I'm getting at, and also just isn't helpful. Case in point, idleness, a word which the very search engine that gave us this definition to begin with will tell you is a synonym for the word negligence. And that's just not what I mean. That's not even going into the fact that making a video essay calling people negligent is a solid way to alienate any audience I could possibly hope to gain from doing this. No, what I'm looking for is more of a colloquial proxy for involuntary inactivity. But unfortunately, I feel like naming this video The Science of Being Involuntarily Inactive wouldn't quite do as well. So I'm gonna stick to laziness, even if its literal definition comes with an implication which isn't necessary to the understanding of what I'm saying. So if we could all just agree to ignore an unfortunate, if not major part of the literal word that this video is about, then we can all move on. And those of you who are paying attention might be questioning why I'm not just using the word procrastination. And that's because procrastination is a factor in my definition of laziness, but it's not the total sum. In other words, all procrastination is lazy, but not all laziness is procrastinatory. Also, fun fact, procrastinatory isn't a word. I had to make it up just to make that sentence make sense. What a wacky world we live in. God, I hated writing this section. Mostly because I'm terrified of just straight up delivering misinformation, which ironically caused me to put off doing this for about 3 days. But I do just want to preface all of this by saying that I am not a scientist, nor am I any kind of doctor, so if you think I got anything wrong, please feel free to do your own research and get back to me. Any corrections will be in the pinned comment. With that being said, trust me, bro. Okay, so laziness from a neuroscientific perspective can be caused by any number of things, one of which is dopamine. What a surprise! For those of you that are unaware, or just need a quick refresher, dopamine is usually described as the feel-good chemical. It's a hormone which handles your motivation, and not just your behavioral motivation either. It also handles your sleep regulation, your movement, even your lactation. So you can imagine, when your brain's ability to produce and regulate dopamine is compromised, all sorts of systems begin to fail, causing your ability to do things based on the reward you get from doing them to just stop working, which is a really complicated way of saying that you just end up not motivated to do difficult tasks. Meaning that you become much more likely to spend all day on your phone than you are to spend the day studying, or applying for jobs, or trying to get started on that new project. Now, this might seem like a very smooth explanation as to why humans become lethargic or lazy, but as it happens, the brain is a very complicated piece of machinery, so as previously mentioned, there are a number of reasons as to why you just don't do things sometimes. For example, the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so assuming that your dopamine has no problems and the correct amount of chemicals makes it all the way to the front of your brain to be processed, if the thing doing the processing, the prefrontal cortex, is impaired or damaged in any way, you're going to have a bit of a problem. You see, the prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain which handles executive function. That's basically your ability to plan, set goals, and sustain attention. Now, astute viewers may notice that not being able to plan or sustain your attention on things might throw a wrench in the works when you're trying to do anything, but we're still not done, because your body is extremely clever. So clever, in fact, that assuming that your dopamine is being regulated correctly, and your prefrontal cortex has absolutely no problems, sometimes your body will just tell you no anyway. This is because your caveman brain evolved to have energy-regulating systems, including something called the hypothalamus. What the hypothalamus does is monitor parts of your nervous system for reports on exactly how much energy you have, and if it receives a signal that you don't have enough, it will at least lessen your production of dopamine, which, as established a few minutes ago, will shut you down pretty fast. It's essentially your brain's way of saying, take a break. Now, for somebody who claims not to be a scientist, I do understand how much I've just fully talked at you about stuff that you might not understand and probably don't care about, but I think that a baseline understanding of the neuroscience is important to understand that what we call laziness to science is just a part of how your brain works. It's completely involuntary. In all of the research that I've read, nowhere did it say anything about this being preventable. But a general rundown would be to say that when you do anything, it's because your energy-regulating systems are allowing dopamine to be produced and transported to the prefrontal cortex, where it is then used to initiate executive function. And you don't need to understand a single thing I just said to understand when I say that any of these things could fail, resulting in you being lazy. Good. So, now we know what happens in our brains to cause us to not want to do things. Now we can zoom out to figure out what happens in the external world of reality to cause our brains to go all funny. It's your phone. Moving on. Yes, unsurprisingly, watching YouTube instead of doing your work is not good for you. I see what you're doing. But beyond that, let's go deeper. What about having humanity's biggest database in your pocket is actually doing you harm? Well, for starters, the modern-day lifestyle is extremely sedentary, basically meaning we spend a lot of time sitting down. We drive places instead of walking, and many people now work at desks instead of doing hard labor. This causes reduced activity, which studies have shown to be linked to reduced energy levels. The question is, what does your phone have to do with this? Well, driving and working are a kind of necessity. Things are far away from each other and you do in fact need money, but when you're not doing those things, you are probably on your phone. Alternatively, you might be on your computer or watching TV, all things that require you to stay in one place. Again, I'm not judging anyone, that would be incredibly hypocritical of me, but I can't just ignore how bad not moving all the time is for you. But that's okay, because you can start right now. Get up and go for a jog, or a walk, or just stroll around your kitchen. It's easy. But unsurprisingly, all of the corporations that make all of the apps that keep you seated don't want that to happen. I'm sure by this point we're all aware of instant gratification. It's essentially the concept that doing easy things is easier than doing hard things. What a shocker. And so your brain likes doing easy things, like not moving and scrolling Instagram Reels. But let's just assume that you put your phone back in your pocket right now and touched grass. I guarantee it wouldn't last long. Again, this is not an attack on your personal character, because I don't know you. This is just psychology. As soon as you get a notification, your brain releases a mass amount of dopamine for the wrong thing. That being that you should probably check that. Why? Instant gratification. Checking your phone is easy. Exercise is hard. Guess which one your brain prefers. If you try, you can brute force it, by the way. It's just not recommended, because, let's be honest, how long do you think you can do that for? Personally, I like to think of somebody who doesn't use their phone that often. And I just checked my screen time, and I spent 6 hours on my phone yesterday. That is a quarter of the day. That just cannot be good for me. And I mean, what about when I go to bed? The artificial light can mean that your brain doesn't know when to go to sleep, resulting in sleep depravity, resulting in low energy, resulting in your energy regulating systems going nuh-uh and just shutting you down. Now, often this means sleeping, but it can also mean going on your phone instead of working because your brain considers it easier. That's insane! And I know that big tech is purposefully farming my dopamine for money, but it might help if my brain wasn't doing the psychological equivalent of sticking its hand in a blender and then complaining about the blood. There are other reasons for why you might feel lazy. For example, a lot of processed foods have a lot of refined carbs in them and sugars which will make you crash pretty instantly. There's also just having a mental disorder which affects the prefrontal cortex, depression, ADHD. If you have any of those, I suggest you get a diagnosis. But none of those things, to me, are as egregious and almost helpless as people's reliance on bite-sized entertainment to fill the gap between any two things, to the point where it starts to affect your life in a way that makes you feel, for lack of a better word, bad. So how do we fix that? You can start by moving a bit more, which is just an incredibly broad statement, so let me get specific. I've been trying this thing recently where when I sit at my desk to do anything, I set a timer on my computer, not my phone, for about half an hour, and then when that timer goes off, that's a signal to get up and move a bit. Just for 10 minutes max, go walk around your home, or go watch your dog in the garden, or do something which replaces a screen with the requirement to move, or at least stand up. I also just have a standing desk, so if you can get one of those, I suggest you do so. Right now. A lot of people work in cubicles or have a job which requires them to do actual manual labor, in which case, sorry, but if you work from home at all, I fully endorse a standing desk. Any one will do. It'll stop you from sitting down as much, which will make you feel better. But if you can't get one, then just make sure you're moving once every half an hour or so. As for your phone, the little devil box, which will try and stop you, I'm sure you've heard many methods to try and get it to stop being so much of a nuisance, like installing apps which make your screen less colorful, or cap your screen time. But personally, the method I've found most effective is to just turn it off. When you want to get some work done, fully shut it down. You don't need to be reachable at all hours of the day. And while, yes, you could just put it on silent to stop the notifications, there is a noticeable difference in what happens when you instinctually pull it out of your pocket. If it's on silent, it's still usable. You could very easily fall down several rabbit holes before putting it back into your pocket. But if it's off and you take it out of your pocket, turning it on becomes a very conscious decision because you have to boot it up, giving you every chance to just decide not to use it. That is genuinely my advice, and I've seen effectively nobody mention doing this, despite the fact that it's probably the only reason that you're seeing this episode. So if you are currently procrastinating by watching this video, please, I beg you, just shut the damn thing down. You can also try turning your phone off when you go to bed. This does require you to have an alarm clock and might not be for everyone. For example, maybe you listen to music to go to sleep, or a podcast, or something that requires your phone. But just generally avoiding blue light is a good idea for about an hour before bed. When you get up in the morning, by the way, that's apparently the best time to go for a walk, which will help you be less sedentary as well. This is because some natural sunlight in the morning helps your body realize that, oh, it's day now, which will help you reset your circadian rhythm, which will also help you go to sleep on time. I think the primary thing I've learned from my research is that corporations sure do love to exploit your brain for profit, ruining your mental well-being in the process, but combating that doesn't mean putting in a whole bunch of effort. It just means making a lot of little changes to your day-to-day to add up to one big feeling. Making you feel like you're a person again, like you're actually doing something. The first thing I told you in this video is that, statistically speaking, we're not any lazier now than before. So I think it's worth remembering sometimes that you're not lazy. Sometimes you just need a break.